Hello, BookTube. We are continuing my endless library tour for 2023. We've only barely begun. We've been at this forever, and we've only barely begun. We're on bookcase number 2. We started at base camp. We went through shelf number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. And now we are at the summit. There's still 200 books up here, but there are no shelves anymore. They're just stacked. So we are going to try to get through this. We'll see. If we don't do it today, we'll do it next time. So let's see here. Okay, the next pile looks like it has no fiction. Okay, or nothing. Well, we have the Oxford World of Classics edition of the saga of Eric the Red and other Icelandic sagas. So of course there will be fiction in here, but you know what I mean. No novels, no science fiction, none of the mystery stuff that we've been doing. There's a little work of history here, A Night to Remember by Walter Lord. His mega best-selling book about the Titanic, the sinking of the Titanic. Still the best book to read on the subject, and that is... what? That is a century? Old? No, well, 1955. That's a long time. That's a very long time. It's not quite a century, but... then we have G.A. Hayes McCoy, The Irish at War. It's a little paperback that came to me in 2007. No idea how or why. I found it quite interesting, but it's tiny, so it doesn't give you much. Okay, then we have a classic. This is The Outermost House by Henry Beston. I have a number of different editions of this. This is a great Cape Cod book. A great people. Henry David Thoreau on. They go to Cape Cod, which is. If you take the rectangle of Massachusetts, there's a fish hook that extends out into the Atlantic Ocean. A fish hook of land, that curved bit of land is Cape Cod. And people from time immemorial have been going there in order to ponder it and then coming back and writing great works of literature. And The Outermost House is one of the best of them all. Okay, then we have The Art of Love. I really ought to read this out loud, but I don't think I can. I think this is probably under copyright. 1972, under copyright. This is wonderful. This poet is just generally wonderful. Okay, then we have a little work of nonfiction from 100 years ago? No, still no, not 100 years ago, 1942. This was huge. Like The Outermost House, like A Night to Remember, this was huge. Sold like crazy. Was in endless reprints. Made its two authors wealthy. Totally forgotten now. This is Cornelia Otis Skinner and Emily Kimbrough, and this is their book, Our Hearts Were Young and Gay. This is just one battered paperback that I have. I have a couple of different paperbacks of this, and once upon a time I had a hardcover. Sooner or later I will find a hardcover at the Brattle Bookshop. I really want one. Okay, then we have The Pelican History of England. One volume of The Pelican History of England. I've mentioned these before, these little potted histories or... little potted biographies can often be really enjoyable because the authors know they can't do a comprehensive thing. They know they can't write actual history. They're giving you, this is a trot, and it's going to be very fast-paced, so that tends to bring out, in some of them, the storyteller, the witticist, plenty of aphorisms. They tend to be really good reading, and this one is by David Thompson, and this is... England in the 20th century. And there we have the Prince of Wales. And this is, of course, it can't cover England in the 20th century, but it's freed because of that, which I really like. Actually, this next one is an example of the same thing. This is The Greek Way by Edith Hamilton, a paperback that is not going to survive another read. This is full of annotations that I need to copy over into some other copy of this book. And this is along the same lines. Edith Hamilton was a classicist. She knew perfectly well that in this survey of Greek literature, ancient Greek literature, the philosophers, the historians, whatnot, she couldn't go into the depth or the scholarship of her own teachers. She knew she couldn't do that in a book like this. So instead, we get wonderful insights and observations that assume a certain degree of knowledge on your part of the subject. This is not meant to teach. Not meant to be comprehensive. I really love books like that. We're going to hit a lot more of them in this particular part of the summit. Here we have Sidney Smith, figure that's largely forgotten today, I would imagine, but once upon a time incredibly quoted, incredibly reprinted. This is an Oxford selection of his letters. The letters are awful witty. They can be bitingly witty. I don't think it'll take much reading of the letters of Sidney Smith, whether it's this version or any other. I saw a version just this morning. Before you realize why so many of his recipients saved his letters, and how it was a big occasion, and your relatives would come in from their houses. You would have so that we could read the letter out loud, and then read sections of it again, and then read the whole thing again, and talk about it. It's not hard to see why that is when you read the letters. They're wonderful. Then we have a little bantam. Oh, it's got schmutz on it. Well, there's a lot of schmutz at the summit here. This is a little bantam mass market paperback anthology. They don't make these anymore, that's for sure. Of the Saturday Review. This is the Saturday Review Reader at number 2. No big shakes in terms of design, just a bunch of their authors reprinted pieces from the Saturday Review, which I don't know if the Saturday Review even exists anymore, but once upon a time it was enormous. Once upon a time it was the sine qua non of your intellectual life in America. Okay, then we have John Steinbeck. We've seen a couple of these different books. These particular bantam books that have this particular design, it's mostly white. I love this design. I grab as many of these things as I can, even with an author that I'm not all that in love with. Steinbeck is not an author I'm all that in love with. This is The Log from the Sea of Cortez. And this is the design that I'm talking about, where you get better than half the back cover is just empty. We saw a couple of these. Yes? We've seen a couple of these in this tour, and this is another one. It's the only, I believe, the only mass market Steinbeck that I have. Okay, then we have Gary Grossman. This is his history of Superman, from serial to serial. That is George Lucas on the cover, but this is not just the story of the Adventures of Superman starring George Reeves. This is the whole story of the character. So the comic books, all of the merchandising, hence cereal, breakfast cereals, and movie serials. The first one of which starred Kirk Allen, and then you move on to George Reeves and the radio drama and whatnot. In terms of a small selection of books about Superman, I can't do without it. I wish that I had a slightly sturdier copy than this thing, but I'll keep this. Okay, then we have this old signet paperback of Clarence Darrow for the Defense by Irving Stone, the author of The Agony and the Ecstasy, a gigantic novel about Michelangelo that was made into a movie. It was made into a terrific movie by that name, starring Charlton Heston and Rex Harrison. Really, really good movie. Well worth your time to watch if you've never seen it. This is about the famous courtroom lawyer, the greatest, as people in his own day said, the greatest lawyer since Cicero. And it's terrific reading. I don't think I would have wanted to know Clarence Darrow. I don't think I would have wanted to be in the same room with him. But his life was fascinating. Just fascinating. And this Stone goes over every courtroom case. We have transcripts from almost all the elaborate courtroom appearances that he had. Some of his speeches went on for hours. And we have transcripts of them. So it's a lot for a biographer to use. I've read 2 other Clarence Darrow biographies, never read anything that comes anywhere close to this. Irving Stone wrote his books like novels. Okay, then we have Frank Spearing, his book Prince Jack. This is a mass market paperback of his theory that Prince Albert Victor, the grandson of Queen Victoria, was actually Jack the Ripper. And he goes to it with wild abandon. It doesn't read like nonfiction at all. It doesn't even read sane. It reads like the author is simply ranting at you. There's no chance at all. There's no basis for that theory in the slightest. Not in the slightest. Close to 100 people were eyewitnesses to Prince Albert Victor's location on the nights of almost all the murders. There's no chance. And he was also a moron. So there's no chance that it happened, but Spearing runs with it anyway. And then there's Tom Cullen. This is another Jack the Ripper book, When London Walked in Terror. As you can tell from the cover, this is every bit as hysterical as Prince Jack, but a lot more grounded in fact. This is basically just a retelling of the Ripper story. Okay, then we have, wow, this is a pretty copy. John and Mildred Teal. This is their book, Life and Death of the Salt Marsh. A terrific natural history of, illustrated natural history of the salt marsh, which is a favorite biome of mine. I absolutely love salt marshes. I'm a big fan of John Way Teal anyway, but this book did a lot of business for them. This was a bestseller. And I have this mass market paperback. This was issued probably 30 or 40 years ago. Still has a sheen on the cover. So this is a solid paperback. This will last a couple of reads, but it's mainly a placeholder. I really want a hardcover with a dust jacket of this thing. And I will find it. It will certainly show up at the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston. Then we have a work of history. This really doesn't belong here. I mean, I know we're working a lot of nonfiction, but I really ought to separate out the explicit history, because that ought to go somewhere else. It shouldn't even go back on the shelf. This is Barbara Tuchman. This is The Proud Tower in the old style illustrated mass market paperback. I love this book. Absolutely love it. I know I'm supposed to love The Guns of August more, but this is probably my favorite thing that she wrote. Maybe Distant Mirror, but probably this. Okay, another work of explicit history. This is Philip Ziegler. This is his great history of the Black Death, the bubonic plague in Europe, that's had a number of different histories, including one that was just recently made. It was just recently translated, and it was 5 times this long. This is still the best one. This is still the best history of the Black Death for a one-volume history that looks at everything, rather than, for instance, a dedicated history about its effect on trade or manual labor or art or whatnot. I really like it, but it shouldn't be here. I will separate out these works of history because they belong elsewhere. Okay, then we have, this is is this Signet? Yeah, this is an old Signet library. The selected poetry of George Herbert, who's great, and this series is also great. They all look like this. They all had the colophon up there. I used to have all of these. Milton, Spencer, Herbert, you name it, and they had it. They did a long, long list of these. And they're really good. They're really solid paperbacks and really well chosen. Good selections all around. But I got rid of all the others. George Herbert's the only one I have. So I'm just waiting, like I mentioned many times on this library tour. These kinds of little mass market paperbacks are rarer and rarer as chance and mishap and fires and flood and rats and mice and silverfish and whatnot decimate their ranks, even among the shelves of the people who are lovingly keeping them. So basically, I'm waiting for someone who has a collection like that to croak, and for the collection to end up at the Brattle Bookshop, where I might have a shot at it. Okay, this is another Signet classic. This is the basic writings of Jonathan Edwards. This is a terrific introduction. Who does the introduction? I wonder if it's credited. This Ola Elizabeth Winslow, and the selection's really good too. This is just Edwards ranting about his imaginary friend. That's all. Oh no. Okay, here we have a science fiction anthology, Rulers of Men. An anthology with works by, do we have a table of contents here? Robert Bloch, Fritz Leiber, Arthur C. Clarke, L. Sprague de Camp. Randall Garrett is in here. The Eyes Have It. How interesting. Bertram Chandler, Harry Harrison. This absolutely does not belong here. It's the only lone piece of fiction. Here, let's put that over there for now. What is this? Oh. Okay. This is an anthology of science fiction. This doesn't belong here either. This is the Eureka Years, in a mass market paperback that would not really take the strain. Not really. This is an anthology of things from the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, but not just fiction. It looks like, yeah, there's a lot in here that is not fiction. There's a lot in here from the letters column and various editorials. How interesting. I must have tossed this on the pile, but this is definitely an example of a book that I haven't read in this library tour. There aren't that many of them, but this is definitely one. Okay. All right. Then we have a series. This is from Fontana, And this is another example of what I was talking about with the Pelican history of the 20th century. This was, Fontana did a series of mass market paperbacks going through English history, period by period, and usually ruling house by ruling house. And they're wonderful. They're all they're addictively readable. This is the first four Georges. These aren't in order, obviously. Then we have the Plantagenets. We have the Stuarts. We have Hanover to Windsor by Roger Fulford, which is my favorite one. Well, you wouldn't think so. You'd think the Tudor would be. And Christopher Morris did the Tudor volume. And, you've got a volume this big to cover the whole of the Tudors. Morris knows that he can't go into great detail. Instead, he has to be aphoristic. And he is. They all are. And it's wonderful. Then we have more explicit history. This is a pan paperback of A.H. Farrar Hockley's book on the Somme. This wraparound artwork on the cover. I worried about how strong this volume was, so I was happy to find a trade paperback that I don't have to put this to the test. That's great. Okay, general nonfiction. This is Somerset Maugham. This is his book, A Writer's Notebook, in this old Penguin series that had everything by him, including his nonfiction. This is just jottings that he does about what was bothering him that day. It's, as far as the weird subgenre of a writer's notebook goes, it's not all that enjoyable. It's not as good as Auden's, for instance, obviously Virginia Woolf's, but they can still be interesting. Then we have Laurie Lee. This is also a Penguin Orange Spine classic. This is I Can't Stay Long. I do not have As I Walked Out One Midsummer Morning, and also what's the famous one? Tea with Rosie. Cider with Rosie, not Tea with Rosie. Cider with Rosie. I don't have either one of those. They were also issued in this format, but they're not here. I don't know. Can we go on? Oh God, no. No. We're gonna have to stop because the next pile is every bit as formidable. So I don't want these to go on for like 45 minutes. So we'll stop here. We're not done with the summit. We will knock off the summit next time. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.